When you look at the history of engineering, the human race is really a creative bunch, especially in the advances of conflict, and in this case, medieval conflict. From the invention of archery, where someone thought, hey, I really want to stab that guy, but he's standing all the way over there, to massive siege engines designed to topple the most stalwart of fortifications. Besiege by Spiderling Studios gives you a medieval playground for you to flatten, burn, fly, steal, and generally destroy, with the only limit really being your imagination of how you want to do it. What's it like? Fetch a hammer and nails, do your engineering degree online, and avoid the explosive bison as we review Besiege on Nintendo Switch. But before we dive into ye old review, would thou mind liking and subscribing? It's the best way that outlets like What's It Like get found, and I can't thank ye enough for doing so. Besiege is a physics-based puzzle action game where you are tasked with destroying over 50 levels of mayhem. The campaign sees you travel to different islands to tackle bite-sized missions with varying objectives. Some of these could be destroying a castle, stealing a stone, or simply mowing grass. Gameplay consists of two phases: build and destroy. You flick through both phases rather quickly as you go to destroy, fail, and then make improvements to your siege engine to tackle the mission again. There's no loading during these phases, so you can flick back and forth with the minus button, failing fast and then getting back on the sawhorse, so to speak, to build your improvements. Sometimes, these failures may be absolutely hilarious, like failing to brace a beam and firing a cannon that just goes flying off your machine, or putting flamethrowers too close to other parts and you end up simply cooking yourself. There are so many ways to approach completing a level, and one great example was playing side by side with my son. We were both on a mission where seagulls circle around a tower and you have to clear them out. I opted to create extendable flamethrowers and start my own Kentucky Fried Seagull empire, whereas my son opted to use spinning blades and cannons to get the job done. The nature of Besiege means experimentation and failure are fun and usually fairly entertaining to boot. This trial and error progression is the strength of Besiege, slowly improving your siege engine by asking yourself, how can I do this better? Sometimes you might make small, incremental changes like equipping bigger wheels more suited to rugged terrain, or sometimes you just might scrap your entire design in favor of redesigning a new war machine from scratch. The game also purposely throws in forced redesigns as well, making your once perfect siege engine completely obsolete in the face of something like flying machines. You don't need to worry too much about losing a design you're attached to though, as you can quick save siege engines to redeploy in later levels. The building in Besiege is fairly intuitive, and in a refreshing change, nothing is really held back from you in terms of building options, with the exception of a handful of tutorial levels focused solely on movement. You can easily snap and click parts together with the simplicity of building a Lego set. Yet for players who want to dive even further, you can use complex gears, gates, sensors, gauges, and springs to create even more complex siege engines that your enemies just won't see coming. It's that simple to play, difficult to master style of player progression that adds to the replayability of this title, which will take you anywhere from 5 to 10 hours to complete the campaign the first time around, really depending on how proficient you are at building siege engines. There's also sandbox modes to mess around in, one with a destructible village and scenery, one for flying machines, and one which is just a big empty space for you to perfect your design. I personally can't wait to go back in the campaign, knowing what I know now, to strike fear into my enemies. Look out, flock of seagulls. No, not the band. Much like its gameplay, Besiege features a unique art style that almost looks like Dungeons and Dragons scenery littered throughout a rather plain space. This really make objectives and destruction pop, and it has a lot of wow factor. Enemy knights waddle around like a comical medieval take on Terrence and Phillip from South Park. Castles crumble in satisfying fashion brick by brick, and explosions and fire spread and wreak havoc in glorious detail. It's so satisfying to land a catapult shot on target and then just watch everything crumble with amazing attention to detail. On the flip side, it's also hilarious to watch everything fall apart when your engineering skills just aren't up to scratch as the fire slowly consumes your siege engine. Besiege runs at a consistent frame rate in both docked and handheld, and despite being able to change the frame rate in the options menu, it really didn't seem to do anything on my end, rather just stays locked in around the 30 FPS mark. For my medieval engineers looking into accessibility options, there are visual options like being able to disable depth of field, motion blur, and your field of view. Volume options can also be isolated, but that may not really be applicable here as there's no spoken dialogue. You can also adjust your controller sensitivity, and the game also supports touchscreen for engineers looking to get a bit more hands-on. Touch works surprisingly well, although it was a bit of an adjustment from the intuitive controller mapping. The game does have a lot of almost monochromatic tones, which may make intricate parts and details or objectives harder to discern, so as always, I recommend further research into finding out if Besiege is for you. For $30 Australian, there's a lot of refined and polished gameplay here. The game is both funny and clever, and it gives you an almost unlimited arsenal to tackle problems how you best see fit. It looks amazing, it runs well, and it makes experimenting with designs fun. Failure is never frustrating, and the campaign and sandbox modes are replayable with every new siege engine design. If physics-based destruction is something you're craving, you really can't go wrong with Besiege on Switch. So, what's it like? Besiege is like The Incredible Machine, but medieval. I award it a 90 out of 100, meaning it falls into a What's It Like certified exceptional game. In the interest of full disclosure, a review copy was provided by the publisher, but this doesn't influence my score. Thanks so much for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. The best way you can support me is to like and subscribe and continue watching my content if you enjoy it. But if you do want to go that bit extra, you can buy me a coffee or join our Patreon, which shows you behind the scenes of this channel. Thanks again.